Hey, good everybody. This is Marcel Purtut, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're broadcasting on September 18th, 2020 from Atlanta, Georgia. Hope all is well with you in the world, wherever you're listening to us. We're recording this a little bit later than we normally do. Had a meeting we had to attend on some business, so potential activity, potential responsibilities may be increasing. We'll keep you up to date as that goes along, and other things going on in the world. But we are recording this now on the evening, even though we usually do it in the morning or early afternoon. But it is what it is, and we're ready to get rolling. Today's broadcast is pretty straightforward. We're going to discuss Week 2 of the NFL season and the Gridiron Blitz, and then we'll preview Atlanta United's upcoming home contest against Inter Miami in the original free kick. And finally, in the Miscellaneous Department, we'll touch on the postseasons of the NBA, the NHL, and maybe some other news, and some college football as well. I want to make some comments on that. As always, I want to follow everything that we're doing. Head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net, premier site news and notes in the world of sports. We had a very active week on the site, maybe the most active week of the year that we've had. The sports are really starting to take place now, especially on the college side of things. We have college football, college volleyball, NBA with the playoffs, and everything like that. NHL Stanley Cup Finals are officially set, and with that means more shows, more interviews, more pressers to analyze. So very excited about all that's going on. So make sure you check out the site and see everything that we're doing. You can head to Twitter and Instagram, our social media platforms there under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word, Sports Inquirer. So make sure you do and go and check that out. On Facebook, you go to one of our two pages there, either The Sports Inquirer or Sports Inquirer. Either one, you head there and check out all the things that we have going on. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under The Sports Inquirer. Just search on those sites. You can do a view and see everything that we're doing. Subscribe to us and give us some likes and everything like that. We would greatly appreciate it. As I said, things are moving and grooving here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're just keep it going. Really, the biggest things are the college scene. That's the biggest factor in what we've been doing. With the NBA, they've been in the bubble. Same thing with the NHL for about a month and a half now. So those sports have been going on. But now that you have the college athletics taking place, at least here in the Southeast, I'm sure if you're listening to another part of the country, you may not have as much college athletics going on, but we are very hyped and very excited to have a lot going on here. And we'll delve and transition right into the NBA, transition into the NHL. No, not the NHL. NFL. We're going to go right to the NFL and the Gridiron Blitz. Some notes from week 1 of the season before we break down the second week of the year. Joe Burrow, he had his first career start against San Diego or Los Angeles Chargers. So that means at least one rookie quarterback has started in week 1 in 13 consecutive seasons, which is the longest streak in the NFL since at least 1950. There were some other potential options. You had Justin Herbert with the Chargers and Tua with Miami. As far as first-year guys, high-profile first-year guys that could have gotten starts, but they did not. Burrow was the only one that did that, and he actually started in the second game. And we'll discuss it right now. The Bengals and the Browns. The Browns are able to emerge with a victory over Cincinnati. I think it was a much-needed win for the Browns. You can't go 0-2 with their postseason aspirations. I picked them to make the playoffs, and if they went 0-2, that would have been very bad, especially losing at home to an inferior Cincinnati team that had Joe Burrow throw the ball 61 times. That's way too many attempts to have in the contest. And I know that the Bengals were struggling to get the lead, get a lead or be close to it, but man, that's a lot of passing attempts. But I think I like what I see from Burrow. He's been hit quite a bit. I think he's been hit 20 plus times through his first 2 games. That's way too much, but he's gotten up and kept going, and the future is, I think, solid there for the Bengals. Tampa Bay quarterbacks Tom Brady and Drew Brees, with their game, they were the first time in NFL history there were 2 starting quarterbacks who were the age of 40 or older, and the first time since 1950 the 2 top all-time leaders in passing touchdowns faced each other in a contest. So those are interesting notes from that contest. We'll delve into their Week 2 games or analyze that New Orleans-Tampa contest when we get to those teams. The Cowboys are a 4.5-point favorite against the Falcons. Matt Ryan had 450 passing yards in the contest in their Week 1 loss to the Seahawks. He passed John Elway for 9th all-time for most passing yards in NFL history. Julio Jones had 157 receiving yards on 9 catches. So he is now only trails Antonio Brown for the second fastest player to reach 800 career receptions. I say all of this stuff because I named all those stats and they still lost by double digits. And I think they're going to have the same type of scenario when they go to the Cowboys. Dallas is a flawed team, not very consistent on their offensive and defensive lines. And that's where I think you look at all the toys, especially on the offensive end. And you talk about Ezekiel Elliott and their receivers and all this other stuff. But their line play is not consistent enough, and that's why I think they struggle. And Dak has some improvements to make as well. But I can say the same thing for the Falcons. We talk so much about Julio Jones and Matt Ryan and all their numbers, and they're going to be Hall of Famers. Julio definitely, and Matt Ryan, he's going to put up a Hall of Fame type of career. We look at the statistics. But in the end, what does that mean ultimately for the Falcons as far as their all-time status, or at least for this season? I think Dallas goes home, they get healthy, and they find a way to win the game of more than 4.5. The Rams and the Eagles, it's a pick 'em contest. The Eagles are going to host them. Look, I know the Rams, a very nice win over the Cowboys, opening up their stadium in Los Angeles. You saw them run the ball quite a bit. I think they're about 150-plus rushing yards in the contest against Dallas. That's a very good recipe to win any game. But I look at the Eagles as well. Yes, they blew a double-digit lead in the second half. Carson Wentz may have had one of his weaker performances of his career, and you add it all up, and you think the Rams going on the road can win. I'm going to take the home team because I still think Wentz is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Ultimately, that's going to be my decision. Now, I think that Goff, I won't necessarily say he's on a short leash. I know the Jalen Hurts factor, the backup quarterback, the rookie out of Oklahoma, is something that people want to talk about and say that he's in line to start the games. And we saw that a few years ago when Nick Foles substituted for injured Carson Wentz and the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl. I don't think this is a similar scenario or situation, but if Wentz struggles again, I think they're not going to bench Wentz, but you might see some packages for a Jalen Hurts, which is code for we're not going to bench you, but we're going to try to get a backup quarterback who does bring some athleticism to the position and give him more run. I think Wentz is going to respond to that, let's say, adversity, and the Eagles win that contest. The Bucs are an 8-point favorite at home against the Panthers. Look, Christian McCaffrey, 134 scrimmage yards and 2 rushing TDs in the loss to Las Vegas. He now has 49 career games, 26 rushing TDs, and 15 receiving touchdowns. Only one other player has accomplished at least 25 rushing TDs and 15 receiving TDs in NFL history, and that's Chuck Foreman. So that name goes back a long way. Despite all of that, you have to figure the Bucs are going to come out and play better. It's an adjustment for Tampa. And don't buy into the drama of Bruce Arians publicly criticizing Tom Brady, so Brady's going to revolt or have an attitude. Both those guys are professionals and they're pros. They've been around the NFL block many times. And if Arians is going to say that Brady made a mistake, that's fine. If it's in public or private, that's just fodder for the media to continue to have something to talk about. And it's of intrigue because it is Tom Brady, the most recognizable name in the game. And he's in a new position or a new spot, a new team, playing in a new system. There are going to be adjustments. That throw to Jenkins, to Jackrabbit for the interception, the pick 6. Does he make that throw in New England? Well, maybe he does. We saw him do that against Tennessee in the divisional round playoffs last year. Brady, as I stated before, he does not have the arm strength or the ability to and he never had a elite strong arm, very accurate and very poised. I mean, maybe the greatest quarterback of all time. I'll give you all of that. But he's never had the arm strength or the ability just to throw the ball and throw through his mistakes. And as he's gotten older, that's become more evident. So in the end, what's going to happen, he's going to have those mistakes in those throws. But do I still think they're better than the Panthers, who are in complete rebuild mode? Absolutely. That 8 points is a little high. I think the Panthers are going to make it competitive, and the Bucks will not cover that contest. Next, we have the Steelers and the Broncos. The Pittsburgh is a 7.5-point favorite at home over Denver. I'll take the Steelers to win this contest and cover the 7.5 points. I know Denver, weird game against Tennessee. I didn't like what I saw in the offense from Drew Lock and that squad. Von Miller out for the season, or for most of the season, their best defensive player, the best player on that team. You add all of that up, I think it's going to be a very tough road trip for the Steelers, who looked very, very good against the Giants. And look, New York has their own issues, and we'll get to them when we get to their contest. But what you can take away from that Pittsburgh contest, one, Roethlisberger looks healthy. That arm looks good. He looks physically in good shape. And he has some decent weapons. We know about Juju Smith-Schuster, but he also found some other guys. If he can stay healthy for 16 games, which is a lot to ask of him, that should be a playoff team right there in that position. And a bigger reason besides Roethlisberger is the defense. You had Dupree in the backfield all night. You have the Watts. They have a very good front seven that can drive the ball or pursue the quarterback and can provide some problems there. So I think when you have a solid front seven like the Steelers do and can get after it, that's a very intriguing team. I still think Baltimore is the better squad because they have the best quarterback and the best unit. But Pittsburgh can be very interesting in that AFC North. We'll see what happens there. They covered that contest against the Broncos. The Niners are a 7-point favorite at the Jets. Jets are a mess right now. Adam Gase looks like he just does not have control of that team. Le'Veon Bell, he's out for a few weeks now with a hamstring injury. Sam Darnold, the quarterback, looks lost in that position. I just don't know what positives you can take from the Jets in that opening road loss at Buffalo. The Niners, tough home loss to the Cardinals to open their season. I still think the Niners can win the contest, but both teams are flawed right now. Garoppolo, I think, still a better quarterback than Darnold, and traveling across the country used to be a major issue. But I think we've seen with the Seahawks that they've won at least 5 or 6 straight games on the East Coast. So that was always the thing. You saw the Raiders, they won at Carolina last week. That was always the thing, you would take the East Coast team over the West Coast team, especially if that early 1 p.m. Eastern time start. But teams travel much better right now. The bodies are more in sync. They know what they're doing. And plus, we're in current conditions where there's majority of the franchises do not have fans in the stands. I know for New York, they're not going to have fans in the stands. So even those Jets fans who are passionate and can provide some noise are not going to be there to help the New York team in any way during the contest. So I think the Niners win this contest by more than 7 points. Miami is a 5.5-point home dog to the Bills. Josh Allen, 312 passing yards and 2 TDs against the Jets in Week 1. He now has 18 rushing touchdowns, which is second most by a quarterback in his first 3 seasons. The leader, Cam Newton, with 28 rushing TDs. And also, Week 1 marked the 11th time that Allen has had a rushing TD and a passing TD. So he's tied with Steve Grogan for the 3rd most all-time through the first 3 years. Only Cam Newton, who has 20, and Dak Prescott with 13, have had more of the rushing and passing TD games than Josh Allen. I think he continues to do that. It has a pretty solid game. But Miami, even with their home loss the road loss to the Patriots last week, they looked okay. Now, Fitzpatrick, multiple interception game. We know you can get that from him. With him, it's extremes, either very good or very bad. I don't think Tua is in line to start right now or play. I think that with the recovering from the hip injury, not having much of a training camp at all, or a traditional training camp, or an off season, I don't think he's ready to make that step to the next level and start playing games. But he'll play this year, though. Without a doubt, he's going to get some playing time and have his moment to shine. But right now, I think it's Fitzpatrick's time, and I think he'll do enough to keep it competitive. But Buffalo ultimately wins the game, but they do not cover that 5.5-point spread. The Colts and the Vikings, this game is at Indy. The Colts are a 3-point favorite over Minnesota. I don't know where to go with this game. You have two quarterbacks who did not have the best opening week. We saw Phillip Rivers at late interception at Jacksonville was costly for the Colts' attempt to win the game. Cousins looked very pedestrian in the contest against Green Bay. It's at Indy, but it's so both two teams playing in domes. I'll take the Vikings to win the game outright. Technically, that could be an upset of the day if you look at the numbers, but I think Minnesota finds a way to win that contest. Green Bay is a 6.5-point home favorite against the Lions. I think Aaron Rodgers is playing at a very high level. I don't know if the Jordan Love pick was necessarily the motivation for him to play better. The first rounder, the quarterback at the Utah State that the Packers took, I don't think that was necessarily the big motivating factor for him to play better, and have a very strong offseason to have the hot start. I'm sure it didn't hurt, but I think more than anything, you look at the Packers, 13-3 last year, and were blown out in the NFC Championship game against San Francisco. I think Rodgers realizes that he doesn't have many years left in him. He's a quarterback. He's in his late 30s, whether it's with Green Bay or somewhere else. He wants to get more than one championship. So I think he came ready to go. And that's a big night or big day against the Vikings. 364 passing yards, 4 TDs, no interceptions. Completely dominant performance by him. Tied Dan Marino with that 300 yards passing and 4 TDs. Each of them have done it 16 times in their career. He surpassed Fran Tarkenton on the all-time passing list, so he's now has the 12th most in NFL history. So I think that leads to a really strong day potentially for the Packers against the Lions, who, to be fair, if DeAndre Swift catches that ball, they win that contest against the Bears. But he didn't catch the ball. Stafford had some inconsistent plays as well in that contest. The Lions defense allowed Mitch Trubisky to throw 3 TDs in the second half. That can't happen. So that's why I'm going to take the Packers to cover that 6.5-point spread. Next up is Chicago. They're a 5.5-point favorite at home against the Giants. Until the Giants fix the offensive line, they're not going to be able to do much. And Khalil Mack rushing against that offensive line, that's a very bad combination. Trubisky, is he the long-term answer? I'm still very skeptical of that. But he did have a good second half against the Lions. That could lead to better things for him overall. I think the Giants' defense is not much to ride home about as well. I think it's going to be a long season for the Giants. I know they have Joe Judge, new head coach, previously the special teams coordinator for the Patriots. But I just look at that roster. Saquon Barkley, maybe a top 5 running back in the NFL, and not much else. Daniel Jones, I'm very skeptical of him as well. But when you have bad line play, and the Giants look like it's week 1, but they may have the worst offensive line in the NFL. You can't run the ball with your elite running back. You can't protect your second-year developing quarterback. What are you going to do? And look, Pittsburgh is a very good front seven, but they made them look the Pittsburgh like the Pittsburgh of the 70s, and the dominance in that way. They're not that dominant. So I think that's a very big problem for the Giants that they're going to have to deal with. Now, I said, going into Chicago, dealing with a solid front seven that the Bears give you, that's going to be a very, very tough contest for the Giants to deal with. So I think the Bears cover that spread of 5.5 points. Jacksonville is a 7.5-point underdog at Tennessee. Gardner Minshew, 19-20 for the pass attempts, 173 yards and 3 TDs, and 0 interceptions for a passer rating 142.3 in their 27-20 win over Indianapolis in the first week of the season. 4th QB in NFL history with a completion percentage of 95% or higher with at least 20 passing attempts. I mean, he almost threw a perfect game in essence, and they needed all of those completions to come out with a victory. I think with the Jaguars, are they tanking? We discussed this on our show last week. it's hard to tank in the NFL because guys are so competitive. They want to play, get their numbers, get statistics, and furthermore, in basketball, and all sports are hard. And every professional sport that you follow or that there is, this is very difficult. But there are certain sports like a basketball or a baseball. Look, if you want to mail in a performance or mail in that bat, or in basketball, maybe not get back so hard on defense and conserve your energy, you can kind of get away with those little things. In football, if you do not play 100% full impact, full intentions, that's when you get hurt the most, when you're not paying attention and you ease off of the gas. So that's why in football, it's very difficult to have guys tank because they're going all out 100% because you have to do that to preserve yourself out there. Not going to do management, cut players, trade top talent for draft picks, and do some other moves to weaken the team and build towards the future? Of course. If that's your definition of tanking, that's probably what the Jaguars are doing right now. But Minshew is a guy that's going to win some games this year. Are they going to be in the playoffs? No. Are they going to have a losing record? Most likely. But they're going to be 3 or 4 contests this year like he had against Indianapolis where he's going to show up and put together a pretty solid performance. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen this Sunday against the Titans. I think it's going to be a very ugly game, a lot of running back and forth. Both teams can run the ball a little bit, but I think ultimately the Titans are going to win this by single digits, less than 7.5 points. I see a 23-20 type of contest where the Titans emerge as the winner, which means that they're not going to cover that 7.5 point spread against the Jaguars. Arizona is a 7-point favorite at home over Washington. Respect to Washington. Good comeback effort at home against Philadelphia. And if we know the Washington offseason had the name change, new head coach, they're in the front office with Daniel Snyder as the owner. A lot of reports coming out of some indiscretions in that front office off the field that are very inflammatory and should be investigated and is being investigated. All those distractions and all those all those things in the way of having a productive game on the field, they ignored all that. They were able to come out with the victory. So very good move by the Washington team. Can't call them the R word. Never tried to do it, but it's very tough because they were that R word for decades. So we're used to calling them that. We shouldn't call them that. I completely agree with the move, but the Washington football team, a very solid win for them. Now they got to turn around and travel across the country and face the Arizona team that I was not too bullish on in the offseason. Now, to be fair, I did say that they were going to put up a lot of points because Cliff Kingsbury, he likes to throw the ball. Kyler Murray, he could throw the ball quite a bit. He's going to run around. You have DeAndre Hopkins, maybe the best receiver in the game, or top 3 or 4. So they're going to put up some points. I didn't know about the defensive side of the ball, and I know like Chandler Jones, he's a special talent as a lineman, could be Defensive Player of the Year candidate, but I didn't think that they would be able to win the line of scrimmage as much as they did against San Francisco. So that surprised me in that regard. I don't have them winning the division or even being a playoff team, but they will start off 2-0 on the season, I think, with the win against the Washington football team. Baltimore is a 7-point favorite on the road against the Houston Texans. Lamar Jackson, another stellar performance in week 1. 275 yards passing, 3 TDs, no picks. Third career game that he's done that with at least a passer rating of 150. So he's definitely he's reigning MVP. I don't want to hear any more about him being underrated or undervalued or not known or not respected. The man was named MVP last year. He's on the cover of. I play Madden mobile. If you're a gamer like me, who's the cover guy for that contest? Lamar Jackson. Who's the guy that can have the highest rating right now in that contest? If you play the game and you reach some benchmarks, Lamar Jackson. Who had the strongest quarterback week, maybe besides Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers? You're picking at straws at that stage. Lamar Jackson. So I don't want to hear any more of these guys. And look, it's an easy thing to do because he's a black quarterback and he was undervalued coming into the league. I get that. But look, the man has had one of the best regular seasons ever in history. And we've criticized him for his postseason performance. And I think people are taking that, especially the black journalists, that are taking that as, we don't think Lamar Jackson's good, y'all are criticizing him. No, him and Mahomes, 1-1A, best quarterbacks in the NFL. One guy just won the Super Bowl and has won the regular season MVP, something that no one's ever done at his age, and that's Pat Mahomes. Lamar Jackson's got the regular season MVP, not the postseason MVP or the Super Bowl MVP. He doesn't have it yet. Can he get it? Of course he can. If he keeps playing like he does and improves, he can definitely reach that mark. But I don't want to hear ever again, like, we don't respect Lamar Jackson. Stop it. The man is in commercials. He is in my face all of the time. Statistically, he's right there. Don't give me all of that stuff. That being said, I think Houston makes it competitive against the Ravens and makes it very, very close. The Ravens are the better team. We've done the Lamar Jackson thing. Deshaun Watson is a very good quarterback as well for Houston. I think it's going to be a very high-scoring affair, very much back and forth. I think the Ravens ultimately do win the contest, but Houston keeps it within 7 points. Chiefs are 8.5-point favorite on the road against the Chargers. Just take the Chiefs. Look, the Chargers, good win for them on the road at Cincinnati. Chiefs are the better team. They're going to roll, win by double digits. Seattle is a 4-point favorite at home against New England. Another guy that I keep hearing that he has no respect, he's underrated, no one likes him, is Russell Wilson. Insert my Lamar Jackson rant outside of the regular season MVP and being on the cover of all my Madden video games. Insert Russell Wilson, who has a Super Bowl championship and is, until Mahomes, was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I think he may still be annually per year at this moment if you break down the numbers. Look, we know about Russell Wilson. 31 of 35 completions and 332 yards passing and 4 touchdowns in the win over Atlanta last week. And he now has 30-plus thousand passing yards and 4,000-plus rushing yards during his 9-year NFL career. Steve Young is the only guy to reach that mark at this stage of his career and really of all time. So the guy does it all. And Cam Newton rushed for 75 yards, 2 TDs in the win against Miami last week. So he has now 60 rushing touchdowns, which is the most all-time in NFL history. He also has 7 career games with at least 2 rushing TDs. So he ties Hall of Famers Otto Graham and Steve Young, and along with Jack Kemp and Steve McNair, for the most all-time. I think he can reach that mark again tomorrow, or Sunday when they play again. But I think Seattle ultimately wins the game by more than 4 points. And then finally, New Orleans is a 5.5-point favorite at Las Vegas. First regular season NFL game in history in the city of Las Vegas or the state of Nevada. I'm pretty sure that's an accurate statement. I like the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, 139 scrimmage yards and 3 rushing TDs in that win over Carolina. Joins Lawrence Phillips as the only NFL players with at least 2 rushing TDs in week 1 of both the rookie and second seasons of their careers. I know he doesn't want to be like Lawrence Phillips on or off the field. Well, condolences to Phillips. He's no longer with us, but still. Phillips, when he came into the league, had some moments and had some flashes, but Jacobs has shown some good things. I think New Orleans, they're traveling banged up. Michael Thomas, he's out for a few weeks with a leg injury, so he's not going to play. That's one less weapon for Drew Brees. I think this contest, as we saw last week with the Rams, even if it's an empty stadium, the home team is very motivated. They play very well. I think Gruden will have them hyped. I think they may have a chance to start the season 2-0, which no one really expected them to do. Or not some people expected them to do. So I'm going to pick the Raiders to win this game. Well, not the win. I think that, though, the Saints will not cover the 5.5 points. I don't want to pick the Raiders outright. I'm a little bit scared. I may rethink it before the game, but I'm leaning towards the Saints winning the contest, but the Raiders not covering. And those are my picks for week 2. I have them posted online on the Inquirer, so you can look at them, analyze them, and make fun of me as much as you want. I encourage it. I hope that you do. And don't put money on these games. Look, the first 2-3 weeks of the year are the worst times to pick games. I think after you see week 2, everyone's had a home game, or most teams, I think everyone has a home game by now, after week 2, that's where you'll start seeing what the team really is. Week 1s are tough. We've seen teams get blown out of week 1 and then become Super Bowl champions. We've seen teams in week 1 dominate, win by double digits, and have a losing season. So that's how you'll have to look at it. Let's transition to the original free kick portion of our show and discuss some Atlanta United soccer. Atlanta United is going to host Inter Miami CF. I want to say FC so much, but Miami, they got to be different. It's Inter Miami CF on Saturday night in Major League action at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's the third meeting in 17 days between the two squads. Now, the teams had a 0-0 scoreless draw in Atlanta on September 2nd, followed by Miami earning a 2-1 home win over Atlanta on September 9th. Lewis Morgan had 2 goals for a brace in the victory. Atlanta's looking to get back on the winning track after its 4-2 road defeat to Nashville SC on September 12th. Now, Jeff Lewis and George Bello each scored a goal in the defeat. Atlanta has gone winless in its last 5 contests, dating back to a 2-0 home victory over Nashville on August 22nd. We asked Tyler Wolff about how the team is handling the loss.
Tense. We were Glass was very critical of individual performances and the collective. Right away, he said that it just wasn't good enough. The intensity wasn't good enough, and that there's players that need to step up and produce goals, produce chances, and no, it was the overall theme pretty much.
And that was Tyler Wolff discussing the team handling the defeat to Nashville. Here's Ezequiel Barco, a man who has had his name rummaged around in transfer rumors, about how the team is handling all of the adversity that they've had to deal with as far as coaching changes and struggles on the pitch.
Pues de la derrota con Nashville, creo que era necesario para cada uno estar en su casa y pensar lo que veníamos haciendo mal. A mí no me gusta perder a nada. Sé cuando juego bien, cuando juego mal, cuando cometo un error. Y estos 2 días lo pensé, lo estuvimos hablando después con el entrenador, los errores que cometemos. Y nada, pero sabemos que depende de nosotros, depende primero y principal de cambiar la actitud dentro de la cancha, de volver a que la gente vea, a que los demás equipos vean que somos un equipo que seguimos con la misma gana de querer triunfar, de cambiar la intensidad, de que un error no nos bajonee y nos tire automáticamente al piso, o de que recibir un gol no parezca que ya se perdió el partido. Y tenemos que cambiar eso, la mentalidad, volver a ser mentalidad fuerte y volver a hacernos fuerte de local. Tenemos los jugadores para hacerlo, pero bueno, depende de nosotros, de cada uno estar concentrado y poner el máximo de gana para tratar de sacar a Atlanta de esta situación complicada.
We had 2 days off after the Nashville game to recover and to think about, how we've been playing and our performances. So everyone's thinking about mistakes and what we can do. I'm someone, I always know when I play bad and when I play poorly. And then when we got back as a team, we talked about it, the mistakes that we're making and how we can correct them. But it all depends on ourselves. We know that we have to have a better attitude, that we can't let one mistake in a game or one goal that we give away, get us down. We can't let that affect our attitude during the game. We have to overcome that. And it just depends on us. We have to have the right attitude, the right intensity, and the belief to turn this around.
And here's Franco Escobar discussing the team. Similar question of how the team is overcoming adversity and trying to move past this rough patch of the season.
Pues de la derrota con Nashville, creo que era necesario para cada uno estar en su casa y pensar lo que veníamos haciendo mal. A mí no me gusta perder a nada. Sé cuando juego bien, cuando juego mal, cuando cometo un error. Y estos 2 días lo pensé, lo estuvimos hablando después con el entrenador, los errores que cometemos. Y nada, pero sabemos que depende de nosotros, depende primero y principal de cambiar la actitud dentro de la cancha, de volver a que la gente vea, a que los demás equipos vean que somos un equipo que seguimos con la misma gana de querer triunfar. de cambiar la intensidad, de que un error no nos bajonee y nos tire automáticamente al piso, o de que recibir un gol, no parezca que ya se perdió el partido. Y tenemos que cambiar eso, la mentalidad, volver a ser mentalidad fuerte, y volver a hacernos fuerte de local. Tenemos los jugadores para hacerlo, pero bueno, depende de nosotros, de cada uno estar concentrado y poner el máximo de gana para tratar de sacar a Atlanta de esta situación complicada.
We had 2 days off after the national game to recover and to think about, how we've been playing and our performances. So everyone's thinking about mistakes and what we can do. I'm someone, I always know when I play bad and when I play poorly. And then when we got back as a team, we talked about it, the mistakes that we're making and how we can correct them. But it all depends on ourselves. We know that we have to have a better attitude, that we can't let one mistake in a game or one goal that we give away, get us down. We can't let that affect our attitude during the game. We have to overcome that. And it just depends on us. We have to have the right attitude, the right intensity, and the belief to turn this around.
And now it's Franco Escobar discussing the team and what they're trying to do to overcome. Atlanta is also 1-3-2 under interim manager Stephen Glass since dismissal of Frank DeBoer on July 24th. Here is manager Glass discussing the state of the team and what is going on.
But players have obviously had the coaching change as well, which is something new for a lot of them. But I would say mentally, inside here, I feel like they're doing well with it. I think they are growing and I think they're learning. There's no doubt everything that's going on, it's not normal for them to have a coaching change, to not be able to go out and see other people out with the training ground. But I think in terms of the mentality of a team and a group of footballers in here, I think that you're seeing a group that will fight, a group that's willing to push, a group that's not accepting of the defeats. Yes, we were poor on Saturday, but I think there was still the look of a group that is not accepting that it's okay to get beat when you play for Atlanta United. And I think that will take us a long way. And I think once we start getting a little bit of fortune, that I think the work rate will earn us, then I think you'll see some different results and performance levels will grow within that, I think.
And finally, here is Ezequiel Barco discussing ways that the team can improve as a team and try to get better.
Creo que tenemos que mejorar muchísimas cosas. No se nos está dando el resultado por falta de por ahí crear ocasiones de gol, de convertir, y estamos recibiendo también muchos goles por propios errores nuestros, obvio. Pero nada, tratar de mejorar en esas cosas, de trabajar día a día y sacarlo adelante. Creo que esto tenemos que sacarlo adelante todos juntos porque estamos pasando mal y sé que lo vamos a sacar adelante.
Yeah, as I said, we have a lot of things we can improve on. I think, as you said, we're not creating the chances and we're not converting the chances into goals right now. And we're also giving up goals because of mistakes that we're making. So we know that we have things to improve. We're working hard to try and correct them, and we just have to move forward.
And that was Ezequiel Barco discussing the team and ways that they can improve. You look at the standings right now, the top 10 teams in the Eastern Conference make the playoffs, and Atlanta sits right at number 10 with 11 points. Miami's only 3 points back at 8. So if Miami's able to come out with a victory, they're going to tie Atlanta for that 10th spot. And that's when we're not going to get into tiebreakers yet and everything like that, because we know that we're going to have at least 5 or 6 more games after this one. But you do have to start looking at the playoff picture. And it'd be a really bad season for Atlanta, even with the coaching change and with the transfer of Pity Martinez away from the team, the season-long injury of Joseph Martinez with his knee injury. Not being a postseason team, even with all the stuff that's been going on with Major League Soccer, the stops and the restarts and the MLS is back tournament and everything like that, not being a playoff squad would be a bad sign. And this is a very winnable game for Atlanta to get 3 points if they want to keep those postseason aspirations alive. And let's wrap up the show with the Miscellaneous Department and touch on some NBA notes. Look, the Clippers losing Game 7 to the Nuggets. Surprising, yes. If you're listening to the show, you know the story. They had each of those games 5, 6, and 7 after the Clippers were up 3-1. In games 5 and 6, the Clippers had double-digit leads in the second half. And in Game 7, they had about 7-8 point lead as well. They lost all 3 of the games. I was talking to my friend. She's a big basketball fan too, and we're watching Game 5. And when I saw Montrezl Harrell posting up and trying to take shots in Game 5, I knew things were not going to go right for the Clippers. Did I see him blowing the series? No. But when I saw Montrezl Harrell 2 straight possessions take the ball and not even look to Kawhi Leonard or Paul George or Lou Williams, anyone on the team, and go straight for baskets, that's not his job. That's not his role. I was like, they might be in trouble. And I put a curse on them. I joke with her about it as well. I was like, the Clippers might lose this series. And sure enough, they did. I think the biggest problem you have is when your 2 top players, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and I've heard all the reasoning, and we'll get to the Nuggets because we're talking about them against the Lakers in a moment. But we're just going to put a bow on the Clippers season. When you have inconsistency from your top 2 players, especially Kawhi Leonard, who had very bad fourth quarters, that's not a good recipe for winning. And if I don't think Kawhi Leonard you should never be outside of your personality in sports or in life. If you're a quiet person, like to be passive or think about things or go about that way to get your goal done, stay in that route. If you're very boisterous and very, I don't want to say passionate because passion comes in different forms and languages and volumes, but if you're more talkative and more direct and you like to approach things that way, you should do that. So if Kawhi Leonard all of a sudden was on the court clapping his hands and yelling and screaming and all this other stuff, that would not be natural to him. So I don't think he should be doing that super rah-rah thing. But as the top player on the team, there are ways that you can show your presence and your dominance in different ways. He was very passive with shooting the ball. I know he went 1 for 11 in the second half of Game 7. That's still not enough shots. We saw him in the second round, or if it was the first round, when Luka Doncic hit that long shot to win the game for the Mavericks. He had Luka at defense. He switched off, and Luka hit Luka. That was a tremendous shot, a step back, high degree of difficulty. But the fact that Kawhi Leonard, multiple time defensive player of the year, or at least one time, defensive player of the year caliber player, would walk away from that defensive assignment is not a good sign. So I look at him. That's kind of the number one culprit. Look at Paul George, inconsistency with the shot. But I didn't see him rebounding. I didn't see him defending. He's been an all-defensive performer. That was the biggest thing of the thing about the Clippers that was most disappointing, if you look at it. For all the talk, and they did a lot of talking, that's why I think all of the media people and the social media and the legit media were on them hard, and you got like their fans being all defensive, and then Paul George had the gall to say it was not championship or bust this year. I watched their press conference from Inglewood, California, when they announced Paul George and Kawhi Leonard with Steve Ballmer, the owner, and they were saying that this is a championship team. This is the goal that we have, is to win a title. So to lose in the Western Conference semifinals after Game 7, after you had a very bad performance and a bad series, and to say, oh, it's not championship or bust, that is very revisionist history, Paul George. That's not good. But for all the talk of the team, and you look back at it now, you're like, well, they don't have a true ball handler. Patrick Beverley does a very good job on defense, but offensively is limited. They lack versatility in some spots. Their defense is the most disappointing thing. And I don't want to hear about the chemistry of how we didn't have good chemistry this year. We had issues. I'm hearing about Morris getting into arguments with Harrell and guys not getting along. If you're a team with the caliber of the Clippers and you have 3 second half leads in each games 5 through 7, especially games 5 and 6, double-digit leads. I don't care if you don't talk to your teammate, you don't get along with them, you don't like his family, you know, beef on the plane ride, y'all have arguments over betting depths. You should not blow games like that at this level, chemistry or not. That's an incredibly bad excuse. And that's a way to try to pass the buck along to Doc Rivers, who everyone respects. He's had some very strong statements throughout the time in the bubble about being a black man and everything that's going on in the world. And I don't think that's the reason they lost. I've heard that as well. Well, the Clippers won't focus. They're more interested in social justice issues than playing on the court. No, that's ridiculous. Don't go down that route of all this stuff, because that's a route we don't want to go. We keep things strictly on the court. Some people say that about the Bucks as well, because they were the leaders of that 2-day holdout, or I don't want to call it a strike or a sit-in or whatever you want to call it, when the guys did not play in the playoffs, and the Bucks were leaders of it, and the Bucks lost in the playoffs. So I've read some stuff. Oh, the Bucks were for social justice, that's why they lost. No, that's not going to tie into anything that's going on the court. We're talking strictly the sports side of things. But when you say there's no chemistry or lack of chemistry, that automatically, and saying the players have been saying that they're trying to push the buck, no pun intended with my talk about Milwaukee, or push the blame onto Doc Rivers, who statistically has lost the most closeout clinching opportunity games in history as a coach. He's lost multiple series, leading 3-1, both in Orlando and with the Clippers. So his game 7s have not gone very well for him. I don't think he gets fired. He's not going to get fired. They're going to run it back and try to bring this team back, because this is all they have. This is the team that they do have. I think there should be more accountability on that squad. There has to be, you can't just coast. And like they were trying to coast their way to a championship, and you kept hearing all the time, oh, we're working our way into shape. We're figuring things out. The load management of Kawhi, who is a man that is in his late 20s, should be in his prime physically, yet does not have the ability to play at least 70 to 75 games in an 82-game season, or whatever the number ends up being this year. I don't know if it ends up being 82 games as far as regular season. And that's what you saw in the postseason. His stamina, his wind was very questionable, and he was getting tired. You look at all those things. If you're going to have load management and do all that stuff, you better be able to play 40-plus minutes, not get tired when the playoffs come around. And you saw some tired bodies on the Clippers during that. So does that go to Doc Rivers? I think in a way it does. And I think there should be more accountability, and they have to figure it out and play hard from the beginning of the year. No more load management, no excuses of trying to figure it out and all that stuff. Get it together and get on the court. And the team can still be a championship caliber squad, but the current approach and attitude that they have now, it's not going to work. And since we talked about all the Clippers woes, the team that eliminated from the playoffs, the Nuggets, start game 1 of the series tonight against the Lakers. I think the Lakers are going to win the series overall because of the Anthony Davis factor with LeBron James. And I think Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee will play a lot more in this series, can limit Jokic and give him some more trouble as far as size goes. But the Nuggets, you have to respect their hustle and their effort. Down 3-1 in the first round against Utah, find a way to win that series. Down 3-1 against the Clippers, find a way to win that series as well. Jokic is a fun talent. It's kind of an Arvydas Sabonis merged with a Bill Walton. And yes, I know I'm naming white post players, and you can cross and diversify as far as your passing, and when you compare one athlete to another. But those guys were the best post passers that I've ever seen. Walton, I saw from video, and Sabonis as well. I saw him play in Portland, so I did see Arvydas Sabonis play as well in my live eyes. But Jokic is the same way. He's a weird guy. He could have only 10 to 12 points. And that was typical of Game 7. I should pull up the stats. But he didn't have that many points, but he had 20-plus rebounds, about 10 to 15 assists, and dominated that entire contest. He gets the ball at the high post, even as far up as the three-point line. He hits the three. He can pass it. He hit cutters. He does everything out there. I think the Lakers can provide a little bit more defensive threat than the Clippers. And I was going to say as well about the Clippers, when I was rambling, I lost track. We heard so much about the Clippers, the defense, and they showed none of it throughout the entire, really since the entire playoffs, even against the Mavs. So put a note on the Clippers there. We're done with them. But the Nuggets, I think they'll be able to score some points and probably want to slow the game down in that regard. But I think that the Lakers ultimately have the team to size if Denver with some trouble. I look at the Eastern Conference. I think the Heat are up 2-0 as we record this show. It would take a pretty solid collapse for Miami to not win that series. I think the Tatum and Jaylen Brown dynamic and Kemba Walker, they got to figure it out. Not enough passing, not enough synergy on that end of things. And then they want Gordon Hayward back to improve the scoring. I mean, he would help. He's a boost. He's an all-star caliber player. But I think that he would not solve a lot that's going on. I'm seeing Marcus Smart take too many jumpers, too many threes. That's not his game. Similar to Montrezl Harrell, as I mentioned in that Clipper series. I don't need Marcus Smart taking pull-up three-pointers. That's not his game. His game is to play defense, get some rebounds, provide some hustle. And if there's shots there, okay, you can take a shot. But he's taking wide. He's attempting shots like he's the focal point of the offense. No, that's not what has to be done. Tatum needs to shoot 25 or 30 times a game, put up his points. Jaylen Brown needs to be a two-way player. Kemba needs to get his points up as well, distribute the ball, play some better defense, and figure it out. But they haven't done that, and I think Miami with Jimmy Butler, who's probably been the MVP of the postseason so far. You look at everything. Well, him and Jokic are probably the MVPs right now so far. You look at what's going on. I think the Heat are going to find a way to win the series. But we'll see what happens from there. NHL playoffs. We finally have a Stanley Cup final. Tampa's going to face Dallas. This is Tampa's. They finally were able to defeat the Islanders in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's Tampa's series to lose. They've been the best team in the bubble for the entire time. They will avenge their first round loss to Columbus in the first round last year. They have the hot goaltender. They have the top players. I think that Tampa finds a way to win that. And finally, make sure you go to our site to check out our Technical State of Georgia Athletics podcast. I go deep into the college football scene of not only the state of Georgia, with Georgia State and Georgia Tech playing games tomorrow on September 19th. September 19th are the games. I also delve into my thoughts on the Pac-10 and the Big Ten and their potential return to college football. We also touch on some volleyball as well, as far as talking to Georgia State and to Georgia Tech players and coaches as well. Make sure you check that out, and I'll give you some in-depth analysis of everything that I think is going to happen tomorrow in college football. Thanks for listening to today's broadcast. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, go to thesportsinquirer.net, and that's a great way to check out everything that we're doing. And you can also go to Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, all one word. Just go on those, and you'll see everything that we're doing. And also, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. Until next time, good fight, good night, and be safe.